They tried to escort her out of the ICU like she was the problem. But the moment hospital security touched Nurse Erin Caldwell, the front desk phone rang with a sound no one at Pikes Peak Regional had heard in years, and the voice on the line didn't ask for a supervisor. It asked one question. Why was a Pentagon tracker frozen inside Trauma Bay 2? Outside, Colorado Springs was buried under a hard winter storm. Inside, the ER smelled like bleach-stale coffee and panic. Erin stood under flickering lights watching a nameless man fight for each breath while policy paperwork and pride closed in around his bed. If you've ever been told to stay quiet, follow orders and look away, this story will hit a nerve. Stay with me to the end. Then tell me where you're watching from and what you would have done. Like the video and drop your city in the comments. Tiếp tục viết phần 2 của câu chuyện bằng tiếng Anh, đảm bảo độ dài phù hợp với số từ đã tính toán trước đó. Giữ cho đoạn văn liền mạch và chuyển tiếp nhẹ từ phần trước. Một câu gọi nhạc hoặc nổi mạch tạo cảm giác như cuộc trò chuyện tiếp tục, không bị rối rạc. Câu dẫn sang phần kế tiếp. Nội dung can đảm bảo tính liên kết hấp dẫn và đóng góp vào sự phát triển tổng thể của mạch truyền. Ngôn ngữ Việt bằng tiếng Anh Mỹ, tuyệt đối không dùng biểu tượng cảm xúc hoặc dầu ngoạc không cần thiết. Tuyệt đối không. Không sử dụng dầu gạch ngang. Không nhá hàng, báo trước phần tiếp theo, tránh các câu như What comes next? It would say. Không tổng kết đạo đức hay tuyên bố bài học. Không liệt kê kế hoạch tương lai. Không meta-commentary. Không emoji, không hashtag trừ khi nằm trong caption gốc được trích dẫn. Lưu ý các phần sau giữ nguyên phong cách Việt. Đã suy nghĩ trong 7 phút 24 giây. That question hung in the air like a held breath, and it pulled Erin Caldwell back to the moment the night actually began. Colorado Springs did winter with teeth. By 10:40, wind turned the streets into narrow channels of ice and snow, came sideways, needling faces and windshields. The hospital sat above the freeway, a block of light in a city that looked scrubbed down to bone. Erin parked in the far lot, pulled her jacket tight, and walked with her head down, letting the storm skate across her cheeks. Her badge slapped against her sternum with each step. Inside, the first thing that hit her was the smell. Bleach burnt coffee, and that faint metallic note that clung to trauma rooms no matter how often they were wiped down. The waiting room chairs were half-full winter coats piled on laps faces pinched by cold and worry. Erin clocked in at the nurse's station and slipped her stethoscope around her neck. The familiar weight settled her. She scanned the whiteboard, read the bed assignments, and noted the staffing gaps the way a pilot noted weather. 2 rooms down for cleaning. 1 nurse floated from med-surg not ER trained. 1 tech called out. Tessa Klein. The unit clerk looked up from the computer with tired eyes. "Please tell me you brought Mercy," she said. Erin set her lunch bag down. "I brought granola bars and sarcasm." Tessa almost smiled. "We're down a nurse." Again. Erin clicked through the screen. "Then we run tighter." A monitor alarm chirped in a slow, impatient rhythm. Somebody coughed wet in the hallway. A gurney wheel squealed. Erin turned those sounds into a map in her head. She had been doing that for 20 years. Now she moved through it the way you moved through your own house in the dark, never needing to see the furniture to know where it sat. Becky Alvarez jogged past with an IV start kit in her fist. "Caldwell." Thank God she called over her shoulder. "Room 9 is trying to leave with an IV in her arm." Erin didn't even look up. "Tell her she can keep it. It's complimentary." Becky laughed once sharp and kept moving. Erin stepped into the charge nurse role the way she always did not, with a speech, just with decisions. She took report, watched the flow, corrected a medication dose before it got hung, and in the same minute knelt beside a man who was shaking with fear and talked him through a CT scan until his breathing slowed. That was the work that kept the place from cracking in half. The triage radio crackled. Erin's head lifted automatically. The whole room seemed to shift, every staff member hearing the same sound and turning toward it like animals in tall grass. Medic 12, inbound, a voice said, distorted by static. Male, approximate 60, found down behind a dumpster near Nevada Avenue. Hypothermic, bradycardic, blood pressure unstable. No identification. Possible intoxication. ETA 3 minutes. Erin snapped on gloves. Trauma 2, she said. Clear it. Becky appeared at her side with a blanket warmer cart already rolling. You think we're getting a real one or a sidewalk sleeper? Everybody is real, Erin said. Let's get him warm. The ambulance doors burst open with a gust of snow and exhaust. Paramedics pushed a stretcher through the bay doors, wheels rattling, and the patient on top of it looked like he had been carved out of the cold. Skin, gray lips, cracked beard stiff with ice crystals. Layers of wet fabric clung to him, and the smell that rolled off him was cheap liquor alley rot, and that sour note that meant somebody's body had been losing a fight for hours. His shoes were mismatched. One sock was gone. The other was soaked through, clinging to an ankle that looked too thin to hold him up. The lead medic spoke fast words clipped by cold and adrenaline. We're calling him John Doe. Found him curled behind a dumpster, barely responsive. Temperature was 86 when we got to him. Heart rate in the 30s. We started warm fluids. No ID, blood sugar 90. Erin leaned in close. Any trauma? Nothing obvious, the medic said. We didn't strip him all the way. Too cold out there, we needed to move. Erin nodded, eyes scanning. Frostbite lines at the fingertips. Old bruising on the knuckles. Dried blood at the corner of his mouth. His breathing was shallow but present, a thin thread she could feel with her gloved hand held near his lips. Erin's fingers found the patient's radial pulse. Slow, faint, stubborn. She looked at his face. Under the grime, there was bone structure that didn't match the story her eyes were being told. There was a set to his jaw, even slack, like a man who once held tension there on purpose. There was also a faint indentation along the bridge of his nose, healed the kind you saw in people who had worn certain gear for long stretches of time. Let's move, Erin said. On my count. They transferred him to the trauma bed. The monitors came alive, beeping a rhythm that sounded like a question. Erin began cutting away wet layers, and her mind sorted the work into clean steps. Airway, breathing, circulation, temperature, the basics that did not care what your bank account looked like. Dr. Shane Whitaker walked in with an energy drink and the faint expression of someone already annoyed. Early 30s, hair too neat for this job, scrubs still crisp. He glanced at the patient and his nose wrinkled. Great, he muttered. Another one. Erin didn't look up. Heart rate 38. Blood pressure 80/40 maybe. Temp is low. Whitaker took a sip and stared at the monitor like it was a spreadsheet. Exposure and booze. Run a tox screen, warm him, and when he's stable, park him in the hall. We have actual trauma rolling in. Erin's hands kept working. She peeled a soaked coat off the man's shoulders and caught sight of his hands. They were calloused, yes, but not the cracked, frayed calluses of someone who spent years begging in winter. These were dense ridges, the kind that formed when you gripped something the same way over and over until your body stopped protesting. A hardened strip along the inside of the index finger. A thickened pad in the center of the palm. The callus pattern was a memory in skin. A small, cold prick of attention ran through her. Get labs, Erin said to Becky. CBCCMP lactate and an EKG now. Whitaker waved a hand. He's drunk, Erin. He's going to sleep it off. Don't make him a project. Erin did not answer. She cut the damp shirt down the middle to place the leads in the fabric peeled back from his chest. There it was. A vertical scar running down the center of his sternum, clean and pale, the signature of open-heart surgery. And just under his left rib cage, 3 small puckered marks in a cluster. Not 1, 3. Healed entry wounds that had been stitched and forgotten but not erased. The skin around them was slightly shiny, the kind of shine that came from trauma healed under harsh circumstances. Erin's breath slowed. The spacing was too deliberate. She had seen the messy randomness of street violence. This looked like a pattern someone had survived on purpose. "Shane," she said, "look at his chest." Whitaker glanced overboard, then paused. His eyes flicked across the scar and the marks. "People get shot, people get surgery. Doesn't make him special. It makes him not what you think he is," Erin said. Whitaker stared at the monitor. The rhythm was wrong. P waves and QRS complexes marched to different drummers. The heart was not coordinating, it was arguing with itself. Erin felt her own pulse tick faster. She had seen this. She knew what it demanded. "His heart rate is 38, Erin said. "That's not just cold. Hypothermia can do that." Whitaker snapped, already turning away. "Warm him up. Fluids. We'll reassess." Erin's gaze stayed on the strip. "Third-degree block." The phrase landed clean in her mind. The atria were firing, the ventricles were doing their own, slow, stubborn thing, and between them was silence. You could warm him until the sun came up, and it would not fix the electrical gap. The medic cleared his throat near the counter. "Did you find anything on him?" Erin asked. The medic nodded toward a small plastic bag, waterlogged and wrinkled. "Just this." He had it clenched in his hand. Took us a minute to pry his fingers open. Erin picked up the bag. Inside was a single metal tag, rusted and dark, stamped with a string of characters that looked more like inventory than identity. 8910A. Below it, a phrase in Latin, the letters half-eaten by corrosion. "Vigilia Aeterna." Erin mouthed it. "Eternal vigilance," she said quietly. Becky leaned in. "That doesn't sound like a bar slogan." Whitaker scoffed. "Probably something he stole. Toss it in his belongings." Erin held it a second longer. Her father had been an Army medic when she was a kid, stationed near Fort Carson. He never said much about what he saw, but Erin grew up around the kind of quiet men who never raised their voices and still managed to fill a room. She remembered dog tags clinking against the kitchen table when he came home. This tag did not look like the kind you bought at a mall kiosk. The patient's eyes fluttered open. Erin looked up startled, not by movement, but by the eyes themselves. Sharp, focused, steel blue, not glazed. They snapped to her face as if he was taking her measure. His hand shot out fingers closing around her wrist with a grip that did not match his body. It was strong, controlled, desperate. Sir Erin said, lowering her voice. "You're in the hospital. Can you tell me your name?" His lips moved. The words came out like gravel. "Do not let them." Erin leaned closer. "Who?" He tried to lift his head, and the monitor alarms rose in pitch as his heart rate slid lower. His eyes darted to the doorway, then back to Erin, and for a second she saw fear that was trained, not panicked. The kind of fear that came from knowing exactly how a place could be breached. "Longbow." He rasped, and the way he said it was not random. Compromised. Whitaker rolled his eyes. Delirium. The patient's gaze cut to Whitaker, and Erin saw something flash there, recognition turned inside out. He tried to sit up, and his rhythm stuttered. The line on the screen jittered like a nervous hand. Erin pressed him back gently, palm on his shoulder. "Stay down. Breathe." He swallowed hard. "Code black," he whispered. "Whiskey 6. Becky blinked. Is he talking about liquor? Erin did not answer. She watched his face. His pupils tracked. His focus held. He was not drifting. He was trying to speak through a body that was failing him. "Shane," Erin said, and her voice was flat now. "He's crashing. I need pacing pads." Whitaker glanced at the monitor and shrugged. "Push atropine. Warm him. When he's stable, move him out." Erin stared at him. He's not going to be stable. Whitaker's jaw tightened. "We do not waste trauma beds on street drunks when we have insured families bleeding in the hallway." The words landed hard, because Erin had heard versions of them her whole career dressed up in nicer language. Resource allocation always sounded clean until you put it next to a human being whose heart was trying to quit. Erin stepped to the wall, yanked open the pacing kit, and tore the sterile package with her gloved hands. Whitaker's voice sharpened. "Erin, don't." Erin peeled the backing off the pads and placed one high on the patient's chest, the other low, careful around the old scars. She connected the leads and turned the dial, watching the monitor until she saw capture. The moment the first paced beat hit the patient's body jerked pain flickering across his face despite the cold. "Easy," Erin murmured, leaning close. "I know." She adjusted the output just enough to hold the rhythm without punishing him more than necessary. The beeping settled into something like a heartbeat again. For a moment, the room breathed. Whitaker stared at the screen, anger warring with what he could not deny. "Fine," he said. "You want this, you own it. When administration asks why a trauma bay is blocked by a John Doe, I'm telling them it was your call." Whitaker turned away as if the matter was settled, voice clipped as he stepped into the hall and started talking about beds and numbers. Erin ignored it and focused on the patient in front of her. "Where exactly did you find him?" she asked the medic, still hovering near the doorway. "Behind the loading dock off Nevada," he replied, tucked in tight like he knew where the wind wouldn't reach. No backpack, just him. Erin nodded. She looked down at his wrists and saw a pale band of skin beneath the grime, a clean line where a watch might have sat for years. A call light flashed outside the bay. Overhead, the speaker crackled with a trauma alert. Erin straightened and took one more look at the monitor, making sure the paced rhythm held, then stepped into the hall long enough to point Becky toward the incoming room and wave a tech toward the blood fridge. When she came back, only a minute had passed, but the patient's face had tightened, as if he were dreaming with his teeth clenched. His lips moved without sound. Erin leaned close. "Sir," she said, "I'm here." His eyelids fluttered. The monitor wobbled, then steadied. Erin kept her hand on his shoulder until the line smoothed again. Erin didn't look at Whitaker. She watched the patient's color shift by fractions gray to pale pink. She tucked a warming blanket around him like armor. "What is your name?" she asked quietly. His eyes had closed again. His hand loosened on her wrist, then fell away. Unconscious but breathing steadier now. Erin checked his carotid pulse, slow but present, and felt a tight knot in her chest loosen just enough to let air in. Becky leaned in close. "You really think he's military?" Erin glanced at the rusted tag, then at the sternotomy scar, then at the calluses that told their own story. "I think he's someone who learned to survive," she said. "And I think he's not finished." Tessa appeared at the doorway with a clipboard. "Whitaker's already glaring at you from the desk. He just asked me how to spell your last name for a note." "He can glare," Erin said. She kept her voice calm because calm was contagious and she needed it to spread. "Bring me his paperwork." She checked the dopamine drip and adjusted the flow, watching the blood pressure climb into a range that felt less like a cliff edge. She rubbed warmth into the patient's hands, moving his fingers, gently checking cap. Refill the small human details that mattered when everything else was chaos. She asked Becky to keep a portable monitor ready and reminded a tech to pull extra O negative from the fridge without making a big show of it. As Erin leaned over him again, her gaze caught a faint pulse of light near the pocket of his torn trousers. She blinked, thinking it was a reflection. Then it blinked again. A small black device, no bigger than a key fob, sat half hidden in the fabric. One slow red blink. Then another. Steady patient, as if it had been waiting a long time to be noticed. Erin's fingers hovered over it, careful. She did not pry it free. She only watched until she felt deep in her chest the same sensation she got when a monitor alarm changed tone. Not louder, different. She slid her hand under the patient's hip to check for injuries, and the device shifted, bumping her knuckles. The red blink continued without pause. Erin withdrew her hand slowly and listened to the hospital around her. The storm pressed against the windows. Somewhere down the hall, a patient yelled in pain. A nurse answered with a firm voice. The triage radio crackled again, words muffled by distance. Aaron stepped closer to the bedside as the radio continued to speak. Tiếp tục viết phần 3 khoảng 2.000 từ. Đã suy nghĩ trong 21 giây. Aaron stepped closer to the bedside as the triage radio kept talking, its static threaded through the ER like a nerve. The red light in the patient's pocket blinked again, steady as a metronome. She kept her eyes on the monitor and forced her breathing to match the pace she had set. Medic 7 inbound, the radio said. Multiple vehicle collision on I-25 near Garden of the Gods. 4 critical. 10 minutes out. A groan rolled through the department, not loud, just collective. People moved faster. A tech sprinted past with a stack of backboards. Becky returned with blood tubing looped around her wrist like jewelry she never wanted. Whitaker appeared at the doorway of Trauma 2. His jaw tight, his eyes already scanning the hall for the next bed he could steal. He pointed at the patient without looking at him. "We need this room," he said. Aaron didn't turn. She adjusted the dopamine drip by a hair, watched the pressure climb from the edge of useless to something a heart could work with, then checked the pacing capture again. "He is the reason you still have a heart rhythm to complain about," Aaron said. Whitaker's mouth twitched. "I'm not arguing. I'm telling you. Move him to the hall." Aaron looked up then. Her stare made the room feel smaller. He has a transcutaneous pacer keeping him alive. He's in complete heart block. Whitaker opened his hands as if she were being difficult on purpose. "You think I don't know what complete heart block is? I think you're pretending it doesn't matter," Aaron said, and kept her voice low so the patient would not hear anger in it if he drifted in and out. "He is unstable." Whitaker leaned closer, lowering his voice too, the way people did when they wanted a conversation to feel like a threat. "We're about to get buried. We have paying patients in the hallway. We have ambulances stacked outside. You want to spend the only trauma bay we have on a John Doe who reeks like a brewery." Aaron glanced down at the man's chest. The sternotomy scar lay pale under the harsh light. The puckered wounds did not belong to a brewery or a park bench. The tag sat in a plastic bag at the counter, rusted heavy waiting. "You can call him what you want," Aaron said. "He is still a human being with a heart that won't conduct." Whitaker's eyes flashed. "You are not the one making the call." Aaron lifted her chin. "Then make a better one." He stared at her a moment longer, then turned sharply and walked out. Aaron heard his shoes squeak on the waxed floor, heard him stop at the desk, heard his voice rising just enough to carry. "I need admin down here," he said, "now." Aaron didn't react. She watched the patient's breathing, the slow rise and fall of his chest, the flutter of his eyelids, as if some part of him still stood guard, even while his body failed. She reached toward the pocket with the blinking device, hesitated, then pulled her hand back. She wasn't stealing it. She wasn't tampering. She was watching. The red blink continued. Becky slipped in with an extra warmed blanket and a portable monitor on a stand. Her eyes went to the door and back. He called Monica. "I know," Aaron said. Becky's voice dropped. "She's going to come in here and talk about policies like we're not literally keeping someone alive." Aaron placed the blanket around the patient's shoulders. "Then she can talk. I'm not moving him." Becky swallowed. "Whitaker's going to write you up." Aaron didn't answer. She had been written up before. Not often, but enough to know the paper did not hurt as much as the quiet regret of doing nothing. The radio crackled again. Another medic unit, another countdown. Aaron stepped out for 1 minute to direct the flow, pointing a tech to bed 6, sending a float nurse to triage, telling the blood bank to prep a cooler without asking questions. When she came back, the patient's eyes were open again. He stared at the ceiling as if he were looking through it. Aaron leaned in close. "Sir, can you hear me?" His lips moved. The words were almost swallowed by the oxygen mask. "Not safe." "Who?" Aaron asked. His eyes shifted to the doorway. "They listen." Aaron's throat tightened. She kept her face calm. "You are in a hospital. You have a heart rhythm problem. We are treating you." A faint tremor moved through his fingers. His gaze locked on hers with sudden clarity. "Longbow, he whispered again. Do not trust the doctor. Aaron's eyes flicked to the hall where Whitaker's voice still carried in clipped bursts. Aaron looked back at the patient. Focus on breathing, she said softly. Save your strength. His grip closed around her fingers surprisingly firm. If they move me, he rasped, I die. Aaron squeezed his hand once. You are not being moved. For a brief second, his shoulders relaxed. The rhythm on the monitor stayed paced and steady. He closed his eyes and went slack again as if he had just handed her a weight he could no longer hold. Footsteps approached sharper than the usual ER chaos, the sound of heels, the cadence of someone who was not rushing to save a life only to control a situation. Monica Price appeared in the doorway wearing a cream blazer that did not belong in a trauma bay. Her hair was perfect. Her expression was polite in the way a locked door was polite. Behind her stood Derek Hale, the head of security, broad-shouldered with a neat beard and a posture that never quite forgot the military. Another guard stood beside him, younger eyes hard, unfamiliar to Aaron. Monica's gaze flicked over the room, taking inventory. The portable monitor, the warming unit, the dopamine drip, the external pacing box. She looked at Aaron like Aaron was one more piece of equipment someone had placed in the wrong location. Nurse Caldwell Monica said, voice smooth. Dr. Whitaker tells me you have refused a direct order. Aaron crossed her arms, slowly, careful not to jostle the pacing wires. Dr. Whitaker wanted me to move an unstable patient into the hallway. Monica stepped farther in her perfume, cutting through bleach. She glanced at the chart at the foot of the bed. John Doe. No insurance. No identification. Aaron kept her voice level. Complete heart block. Hypothermia. Old gunshot wounds. Open heart surgery scar. He needs ICU and cardiology. Monica made a small noise, almost a laugh without humor. Old gunshot wounds. Aaron reached for the plastic bag with the rusted tag and held it up. He had this clenched in his fist. Monica's eyes flicked to it in a way as if it were dirty. People steal things. Aaron leaned forward slightly. He was speaking coded phrases. Longbow. Code black. He asked me not to let them move him. Monica's smile tightened. He's delirious. He was lucid, Aaron said. Monica looked at Derek. We have multiple traumas inbound. This room is needed. Derek shifted his weight. His eyes went to the pacing box, then to Aaron's hands. Ma'am, he said carefully, she's pacing him. Monica's gaze hardened. Then we can transfer him. Aaron shook her head once. No. If you disconnect him, he arrests. If you move him, the wire pulls and you lose capture. He needs a transvenous pacer, not a wheelchair. Monica's voice sharpened. Do you hear yourself? You're describing a homeless man as if he's a special asset. You've been on nights too long. You're exhausted. You're improvising a spy movie inside my emergency department. Aaron felt heat rise in her face, not from embarrassment, from fury. She held it down like she held pressure on an artery. This is not a movie, Aaron said. This is a human heart failing on a table while we argue about billing. Monica's eyes narrowed. This hospital is not a shelter. Aaron's voice turned cold. Then it is not a hospital. The air changed. Even Becky stopped moving. Derek glanced at the younger guard as if silently telling him not to escalate. Monica took one step closer to the bed and pointed. Remove him from this room. Aaron stepped between Monica and the patient without thinking. Her body moved first instinct, older than thought. No. Monica blinked, surprised by the simplicity of it. Excuse me. He is unstable, Aaron said. I am not allowing transport. Monica's smile vanished. You are relieved of duty, effective immediately. Aaron didn't flinch. You cannot relieve me from a patient in active life support without a safe handoff. Monica turned to Derek. Escort Nurse Caldwell out. Derek hesitated. Monica, if she leaves, who is managing the pacing? Monica's voice cut. Dr. Whitaker. Aaron laughed once sharp and stopped herself. He hasn't touched the patient since he walked in. Whitaker appeared behind Monica as if summoned by the tension. His face was flushed, his posture defensive. "This is insubordination," he said. "I told her to move him." Aaron looked at him. "You told me to kill him in a hallway." Whitaker's expression hardened. "That is not what I said." Aaron turned her gaze back to Monica. "If you want to fire me, write it down. But I'm staying here until the patient is stable enough for transfer." Monica's jaw clenched. "Derek, now." Derek stepped forward, his eyes apologetic. "Aaron," he said softly. "Come on. Don't make this worse." Aaron didn't move. "It is worse. We are minutes from cardiac arrest if anyone touches those leads." The younger guard stepped in behind her. Aaron felt his hands grab her upper arms, pinning them. The touch was rough and wrong. Anger flashed through her so fast it tasted metallic. "Let go," Aaron snapped. The guard tightened his grip. Derek reached for Aaron's elbow, not aggressive but firm, trying to pull her away from the bed. Aaron twisted hard enough to slip one arm free and reached into her scrub pocket. Her fingers closed around a syringe she had grabbed earlier when the rhythm dipped an emergency dose she had not used. She brought it up, cap still on, held it in front of her like a warning. The room froze. Monica stared at the syringe, her eyes widening, then narrowing again as she recalculated. "Are you threatening my staff?" Aaron's voice stayed steady. "I am preventing my staff from killing a patient." Whitaker scoffed. "She's having a breakdown." Aaron's gaze cut to him. "I'm having a standard of care." Derek's hands lifted palms out, trying to de-escalate. Aaron put that down. Aaron kept it up just long enough to make one point. "If you touch the pacing leads, his heart stops. If you move him, he arrests. I will document it, I will report it, and I will testify to it." Monica's face went rigid. "You are fired," she said again, louder now, as if volume created authority. "Get her out." The younger guard yanked Aaron backward. Her shoulder hit the supply cart. The syringe slipped from her fingers and clattered to the floor. Aaron lunged forward instinctively, but Derek caught her by the forearm, holding her in place. The patient's monitor alarmed the rhythm, wobbling at the movement in the room. Aaron's stomach dropped. She fought against the grip, trying to reach the pacing box to steady the wires. "Stop," she shouted. "You're pulling the leads." Monica pointed at the bed. "Remove him from the pacer." Derek's eyes snapped to Monica. "Ma'am, that's going to arrest him." Monica's voice turned vicious. "Do it, or you're next." Derek looked at Aaron. His face tightened with conflict. He had served. He had seen bodies that stopped because someone followed the wrong order. His hand hovered near the pacing switch, trembling almost imperceptibly. Aaron's voice broke through raw. "Derek, look at his scars. Look at his tag. This is not nothing." Derek's eyes flicked down to the patient's chest, to the sternotomy line, to the clustered wounds. His throat bobbed as he swallowed. His hand remained suspended, caught between policy and pulse. Then a sound cut through the ER. It was not the chirp of a cell phone, not the warble of a normal landline. It was a harsh old ring that seemed to come from another era, loud enough to slice through screams and alarms. The red rotary phone at the nurse's station was ringing. Aaron had seen it on the counter for years, Dusty ignored like a relic someone forgot to throw away. She had never heard it make a sound. Tessa looked up from her computer as if the phone had spoken her name. Her eyes went wide. She stood slowly, like sudden movement might trigger something. The phone rang again, the sound heavy, insistent, wrong. Tessa reached for it with a hand that shook. "Pikes Peak, regional emergency," she said, voice thin. "This is Tessa." She listened for half a second. Her face drained of color so quickly it looked like the blood had been pulled out by suction. She swallowed. Her eyes lifted toward Monica, toward Derek, toward Aaron, held in place. She stood up straighter and held the receiver out like it weighed too much to carry. "Ma'am," Tessa said, voice shaking. "You need to take this." Monica didn't turn. "I am dealing with a rogue employee. Take a message." Tessa's lips parted. No sound came out at first. Then she tried again, louder. "Ma'am, they said they are the Pentagon." The words landed like a slap. Even Whitaker went still. Monica turned slowly, her heels clicking softer now. "That's not funny," she said, but her voice wavered. Tessa shook her head terrified. "I'm not joking." Monica walked to the desk as if she were stepping onto glass. She took the receiver, lifting her chin as if posture could protect her. "This is Monica Price, administrator on call." Erin could hear the voice on the other end, even from where she stood. Not the words at first, just the tone. A voice that did not negotiate. A voice that expected compliance because it lived in a world where compliance was survival. Monica's expression changed mid-breath. Her eyes widened, then narrowed, then went flat. Her hand tightened around the receiver. "I don't understand," Monica said, and for the first time she sounded like a person rather than a policy. "You are saying a tracker." The voice on the line rose sharp enough that Erin heard fragments. "Colonel," the voice said, "stationary." Erin felt a cold wave slide up her spine. Her gaze snapped to the patient. Monica's face went pale. She swallowed hard. "He is a John Doe," she said weakly. "No identification." The voice on the line cut through. "Put the nurse on." Monica turned her head slowly toward Erin, receiver still at her ear. Her lips parted. She looked like she had forgotten how to be in charge. "It's for you," she whispered. Derek released Erin as if her skin had become untouchable. The younger guard stepped back, eyes darting around the room, suddenly aware that he might have just laid hands on a problem much larger than hospital security. Erin rubbed her arms once, then walked to the desk. Her legs felt steady, even though her heart pounded. She took the receiver. The plastic was warm from Monica's grip. "This is Nurse Erin Caldwell," she said. A pause. Then the voice softened by a fraction the way steel softened into a blade. "Miss Caldwell," the man said. "This is General Roland Pierce." Erin's mouth went dry. She forced her voice to stay clear. "Yes, sir." "You are currently monitoring," Colonel Nathan Mercer Pierce said, and it was not a question. Erin glanced back at the bed. The patient lay still-paced rhythm, holding chest rising shallowly. Under the grime and beard he looked smaller than the title, but the title fit the scars. "Yes, sir," Erin said. "He is in complete heart block. I am pacing externally at 70. He is hypothermic and he has old ballistic trauma. He needs an ICU bed and a transvenous pacing wire." The general did not hesitate. "Is he stable?" "He is stable because I am pacing him," Erin said. "If anyone disconnects that box or moves him carelessly, his heart stops." Erin heard a breath on the other end, controlled anger contained behind discipline. "Do not allow anyone to touch him," Pierce said. "Do not allow anyone to remove you from that room." Erin tightened her grip on the receiver. "Administration is trying to discharge him." A silence, then the general's voice dropped, and the drop made it more dangerous. "If Colonel Mercer's heart stops for even 1 second while he is in your care, every person who interfered will be dealt with by agencies that do not care about hospital protocol." Monica flinched, as if she had been struck even though Pierce was not speaking to her directly. Pierce continued, "You are in command of that room until my team arrives." "Yes, sir," Erin said. "Stay on the line," Pierce said. "Look outside." Erin turned toward the nearest window, the one that faced the ambulance bay. Snow smeared the glass, and the parking lot lights threw halos into the storm. For a second, she saw only swirling white. Then she heard it. A deep, rhythmic thump that did not belong to weather or traffic. The sound grew until it pressed against the building. The air itself seemed to vibrate. Nurses in the hallway looked up. A patient in a wheelchair stopped moving. Even the monitors seemed to pause between beeps. Through the snow, shapes emerged. Dark, massive silhouettes dropping out of the clouds' lights, cutting through white like blades. Helicopters low and controlled, settling onto the lawn with the confidence of machines built for war. Erin's breath caught. She turned back to the desk. Pierce's voice remained calm. "Do not let anyone into that bay. Do not let anyone remove the patient. My team is entering the building now." "Yes, sir," Erin said. She hung up slowly and set the receiver back in its cradle. The ER felt altered as if the air had been replaced. Monica stood stiff beside the desk, her face the color of paper. Whitaker hovered behind a chart rack, eyes wide, suddenly smaller than his own ego. Derek stared toward the entrance, his jaw set, shoulders squared. The automatic doors at the front of the ER burst open, pushed hard against the wind. A line of men moved in, not rushing, not hesitating. They wore dark tactical gear with muted flags on their shoulders. Their faces were hard, their movements quiet and synchronized. Rifles held low muzzles, controlled eyes, scanning high and low like they were reading a map no one else could see. The lead man stopped in front of the nurse's station and looked directly at Aaron. Up close, he was younger than Aaron expected, but his eyes were old. He spoke without raising his voice, and the room still heard him. "Ma'am," he said. "Captain Logan Reyes." Aaron nodded once. Nurse Aaron Caldwell. Reyes's gaze flicked past her to the trauma bay, then back. "Is the patient stable?" "He is alive," Aaron said. "Because he is paced, and he cannot be moved." Reyes did not argue. He turned slightly, speaking to his team in a tone that carried without effort. "Secure this wing. No one enters Trauma 2 without her say." Monica found her voice in a thin burst. "You cannot come in here and take over my emergency department." Reyes looked at her the way you looked at bad weather, an inconvenience you planned around. "Phones on the counter," he said to the room, ignoring Monica. "No calls, no texts, no pictures." His men spread out. One took position at the door. Another moved toward the ambulance bay entrance. Their boots were silent on the tile, but the threat of them filled every corner. Erin stepped back toward the trauma bay, her hands steady, her mind narrowing to the patient again. The paced rhythm still held. The red beacon in his pocket blinked like a heartbeat with its own agenda. Erin placed her palm lightly on the bed rail and leaned in close to the unconscious man. "You're still here," she murmured, more to herself than to him. Behind her, the trauma bay door closed with a soft sea of finality, and the monitors continued their measured beeping, keeping time for a room that no longer belonged to the hospital alone. "Tiếp tục viết phần 4. Đã suy nghĩ trong 29 giây. The paced rhythm held, but it held the way a door held under a storm only as long as the hinges stayed intact. Erin kept her hands close to the patient without touching anything she did not need to touch. The pads on his chest were already leaving faint red outlines beneath the gel. The pacing box sat on the counter like a fragile promise, its dial set at a rate she had chosen with more faith than comfort. She watched the monitor, counted the seconds between beats, and listened to the room outside the bay as Captain Reyes and his men reshaped the emergency department with quiet authority. Boots moved in the hall with disciplined restraint. A clipped voice called positions. A radio mic clicked, then nothing but static. The building creaked under wind. Somewhere beyond the walls, rotors still hammered the air, fading as the helicopters settled and their crews moved toward doors that were never meant to be used by people like them. Monica Price stood near the nurse's station, stiff eyes darting like she was watching her own job evaporate molecule by molecule. Dr. Shane Whitaker hovered behind a chart rack, shoulders hunched as if the rifles had physically shortened him. Derek Hale took a post by the trauma bay door, arms folded, jaw set, trying to look like he belonged in a chain of command he did not control. Erin did not look at any of them for long. She did not need the drama. She needed a heart to keep beating. The patient's eyelids fluttered. His mouth opened slightly. A sound came out, a breath that tried to become a word. Erin leaned in. "Sir, stay with me." His eyes found her face with sudden clarity. The steel blue focus was back sharp enough to cut through pain. His fingers twitched, searching. Erin offered her hand and he gripped it, weak but purposeful. "Cold," he rasped. "I know," Erin said. "We're warming you. Keep breathing." His gaze slid to the doorway. His pupils widened for a split second. Erin followed the direction of his fear and saw Captain Reyes at the threshold speaking quietly to one of his men. Reyes looked back at Erin just once and gave her a slight nod, a question without words. Erin nodded back. "I have him." The patient's grip tightened and then loosened. His eyes rolled slightly unfocused, then snapped back. A tremor ran through his jaw. "Not safe," he whispered. Erin kept her voice calm. "You are in a secure room. You are not being moved." His lips formed the shape of another word. It came out broken. "Wire." Erin's stomach tightened. He did not mean the pacing pads. He meant the wire. She had already been thinking about the one that would turn this from a temporary rescue into actual stabilization. "You need a transvenous pacing wire," she said quietly, as if naming it might make it real. His eyes closed. The monitor showed paced spikes, then a beat that lagged, then another that failed to capture cleanly. Erin's head lifted. The shape of the rhythm changed by a fraction, and that fraction hit her like a siren. "Becky," she called toward the doorway. Becky Alvarez appeared instantly drawn by the tone. "Yeah. Get the crash cart to the door," Erin said. "And tell Reyes I need his medic in here, now." Becky's eyes widened, but she did not question. She moved fast. Erin turned back to the pacing box and adjusted output just a notch, watching for capture. The patient's body jerked slightly as the current increased. His mouth tightened in a silent grimace. Erin hated it. She did it anyway. Pain was better than death. The monitor steadied for 3 beats. Then the line wobbled again. The patient's chest rose, and then stalled for half a second, like his lungs had forgotten the rhythm of living. Erin's voice sharpened. "Sir, breathe." His eyes opened unfocused. His lips moved soundlessly. The monitor alarmed. The paced spikes fired, but the heart did not follow. Erin's hand shot to the pads, pressed them down, checked contact. She saw sweat beating at his temples despite the cold. His skin tone, which had been crawling toward pale pink, slid back toward gray. "Come on," she murmured, more to the muscle beneath the ribs than to the man himself. "Stay with me." The door to the bay opened, and Captain Reyes stepped in. His presence changed the air. He looked at the monitor, then at Erin's hands, then at the patient. "What do you need?" Reyes asked. "Your medic," Erin said. "And I need everyone in this room to stop touching anything unless I tell them." Reyes glanced toward the doorway and barked one word: "Ricks." A stocky man moved in a heavy pack on his back, his face calm and unreadable. Sergeant Jonah Ricks did not look like a paramedic. He looked like someone who had worked under bad light in worse places. His eyes flicked to the monitor once, and his hands were already moving, pulling gloves, checking airway equipment, scanning the patient with a speed that was not frantic, just efficient. Dr. Whitaker pushed into the doorway behind Reyes. "This is insane," he snapped. "You cannot run my department like a battlefield." Reyes did not turn. "You are not running anything right now," he said. Whitaker's face flushed. He stepped closer, trying to push his authority into the space. "That is my patient." Erin turned her head just enough to look at him. "Then help," she said. "Stand at the head of the bed. Prepare to intubate if he arrests." Whitaker's gaze flicked to Rick's rifle slung against his back, then to Rhea's sidearm, then away. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. The patient's rhythm collapsed. A high-pitched, continuous alarm filled the room. Erin's vision narrowed to the monitor. Chaotic waves. No organized beats. Ventricular fibrillation, the heart quivering instead of pumping. "VFIB Erin," said voice snapping into command. "Charge to 200 joules. Rick's airway. Becky, bag him." Becky moved without hesitation, grabbing the bag valve mask and sealing it over the patient's face. Erin pulled the defibrillator paddles from the crash cart gel slick under her gloves. Whitaker stood at the foot of the bed, frozen eyes wide, hands hovering, like he was afraid his fingers might be accused of something. Erin's voice cut through him. "Dr. Whitaker, head of bed, now." Whitaker shook his head once, a tiny motion that looked like disbelief. "I can't," he whispered. Erin stared at him. "You can. You are choosing not to." The defib charged, the pitch rising. Erin looked around the room. Clear. Reyes and Ricks stepped back. Becky lifted her hands but kept the mask sealed, switching to one-handed technique to avoid contact with the bed. Whitaker did not move. Erin's eyes locked on him. "Clear," she repeated louder. Whitaker jerked backward like he had been yanked by a rope. Erin pressed the paddles down. Shocking. The patient's body convulsed. The monitor flatlined for a beat that felt too long. Then the chaotic scribble returned. "Still, V, fib," Erin said. Her own heart hammered, but her hands stayed steady. "Charge to 300 joules." Becky's bagging was rhythmic, precise. Ricks leaned in at the head, assessing jaw tone, preparing to take the airway if needed. Whitaker stood against the wall now. Pale, sweating eyes fixed on the weapons as if they were the reason the man was dying, not the reason he might live. The defib charged again. "Clear," Erin said. Shock. The body jerked. Flatline. Erin's throat tightened. She watched. 1 second, 2. A jagged line appeared, then another, then a weak, organized rhythm tried to form and then slipped away. "Still unstable," Erin said. "Ricks tube him." Ricks moved in fast and controlled. He positioned at the head, opened the patient's mouth, swept for obstruction with a gloved finger, and inserted the laryngoscope with practiced precision. His movements were smooth enough to look calm, even when time was burning. Becky continued bagging between attempts. Erin watched the monitor in the patient's chest. Ricks slid the tube in. He confirmed placement by feel and sound-checked bilateral chest rise, listened quickly, then nodded. "Tube is in. Breath sounds present." Erin felt a sharp rush of relief that lasted half a second before the rhythm dipped again. "Charging," she said. 300 again. "Clear." Shock. Silence. The room held its breath. The monitor beeped once tentative, then again. A rhythm returned weak but organized. Sinus barely. The heart was back, not strong, but back. Erin exhaled and realized her shoulders had been clenched so tightly her neck hurt. Reyes watched her, then the patient, then the pacing box. "Is he stable?" "He is alive," Erin said. "But the external pacer is not enough. The pads are burning his skin. The connection is intermittent. He needs a temporary transvenous wire." Whitaker found his voice again thin and defensive. "We do not have cardiology down here. That is not an emergency department procedure." Erin looked at him, eyes hard. "It is when the heart will not conduct." Whitaker shook his head. "I am not doing it. I am not trained." Erin's jaw tightened. "You have watched it done. You have assisted." "That is not the same," Whitaker said, and his gaze flicked to Reyes again. "Not with this going on." Erin turned away from him. She opened the kit drawer on the crash cart and pulled out the transvenous pacing kit, laying it out with the economy of someone who did not have time to hesitate. Sterile gown, gloves, betadine, lidocaine, scalpel, introducer needle, wire. Monica Price appeared in the doorway, her face pinched with anger and fear. "Nurse Caldwell," she snapped. "Put that down." Erin did not look up. "He will die without it." Monica's voice rose. "You are not a physician. If you cut into him, you will be charged. You will lose your license. You will go to jail." Erin's hands paused. Not because Monica had scared her, because the truth of it weighed something. Erin knew what she was. She knew the boundary lines. She also knew a heart did not care about her credentials. She looked down at the patient's face. Under the grime, he looked older now, exhausted, vulnerable. The scars on his chest were a map of battles he had survived. The last one was happening here under fluorescent lights, surrounded by people arguing over permission. Erin's voice softened. "Sir," she said, leaning close, "I need you to stay with me." His eyes fluttered. A faint squeeze of her hand. Consent in the only way he could give it. Reyes stepped between Erin and Monica, close enough that Monica had to look up at him. His voice was calm. "Ma'am, step back." Monica's lips tightened. "This is my hospital." Reyes' gaze did not change. "The patient is under federal protection. You interfered with life-saving care. You will not interfere again." Monica's face flushed. "I demand to see a warrant." Reyes leaned slightly closer, not threatening with volume, only with certainty. "If his heart stops because you wanted paperwork, There will be consequences that do not require your permission. Monica swallowed and stepped back half a pace as if her body moved before her pride could stop it. Reyes turned to Aaron. Do what you need to do. Aaron's mouth went dry. I need a sterile field. I need someone to monitor the rhythm. I need suction. And I need the room clear. Reyes nodded and spoke one sentence toward his team. Instantly, the men repositioned, giving Aaron space while keeping the door controlled. Rix moved to Aaron's side and opened supplies with sterile technique that surprised Becky. Becky grabbed betadine and began scrubbing the patient's neck with quick, careful strokes. Whitaker stood near the back wall staring at the floor. Aaron pulled on the sterile gown, then gloves. Her hands were steady because she did not allow herself the luxury of shaking yet. She draped the patient's neck, palpated landmarks, and injected lidocaine with a small, practiced motion. Becky whispered almost to herself, "You've done this." Aaron did not answer. She had assisted. She had watched. She had held pressure. She had handed wires and catheters and learned by proximity because learning mattered even when it was not assigned. Now the learning had teeth. Aaron picked up the scalpel. Monica made a noise, a sharp intake of breath. "Stop," she said. Reyes lifted one hand without looking at her. Monica fell silent. Aaron made a small incision at the right side of the neck. Blood welled controlled bright against pale skin. She suctioned quickly, then used the introducer needle, angling carefully, feeling for the jugular with touch and experience. Her world narrowed to sensations. The slight give as the needle entered, the flash of dark venous blood, the control of her own breathing, the monitors beeping in the background like a metronome that could change its mind at any second. "Wire," Aaron said. Rix placed the wire into her palm. For a man carrying a rifle, his hands were gentle, precise. Aaron advanced the wire slowly. Every millimeter mattered. Too shallow, and it would not capture. Too deep, and she could perforate, create a catastrophe she could not undo. She watched the monitor as if it were a horizon line. She advanced a fraction, then stopped, then advanced again. "Come on," she whispered, not to anyone else, only to the physics inside a failing heart. The monitor changed. The waveform shifted. The paced spikes became tall, strong, obedient. Aaron's eyes widened. "Capture," she said, voice barely louder than breath. "We have capture." Becky exhaled a sound that was half laugh, half sob. Aaron secured the wire, taped it down, checked placement, adjusted the rate to a stable number that gave the heart room to keep up. The patient's skin color began to improve by degrees that felt miraculous only because she knew how close it had been to gray. She stripped off her outer gloves. Her hands started to tremble now that it was done. The delay hit her like an aftershock. Rix looked at her and gave a small nod. "That was clean," he said, as if complimenting a good stitch line in the field. Aaron swallowed. "Keep him warm. Monitor his pressure." Reyes moved to the doorway, scanning the hall. How long can he hold? "If the wire stays in and the battery holds, he can hold," Aaron said. "But he is fragile. He cannot be jostled." Reyes nodded once, understood. For a moment, the ER around them felt quiet, as if even the building was waiting. Then the lights flickered. Once, twice. The overhead fluorescence stuttered the way a dying bulb stuttered before it went dark, except this was not one bulb. This was the entire wing. The monitors blinked, the ventilator alarm chirped, then everything cut out. Darkness slammed down. Emergency lights kicked on a second later, bathing the hall in dim red. The trauma bay was lit like a submarine. The portable monitor flashed, then stabilized on battery. The pacing box beeped a warning tone, then continued. Aaron's breath caught. She looked at the transvenous pacer. It was running. Thank God. Reyes tapped his headset. "Command," he said. "Do you copy?" Only static answered. Reyes' jaw tightened. He turned to one of his men in the hall. "Comms." The man shook his head, dead, jammed. Aaron's eyes moved to the ceiling as if she could see the signal being strangled above them. "The hospital lost power," she said. "Generators should keep basic systems." Reyes' eyes were sharp. "This feels targeted." A distant crash echoed through the building, muffled by walls. Another sound followed. Not an alarm, not a patient. Something heavier, like a door forced open. Erin felt her skin prickle. Monica's voice broke the moment pitched too high. "This is unacceptable," she said. "We have patients on ventilators upstairs." Derek Hale stepped into the doorway, eyes wide now. The ex-Marine composure replaced by real concern. "Phones are out," he said. "Landlines too. Security cameras are down." Reyes looked at him. "How many exits from this wing?" Derek answered without hesitation, the way training surfaced when fear tried to take over. "Main entrance, ambulance bay, and a service corridor that runs behind imaging to the loading dock." Reyes nodded. "Lock them down. Post eyes on the loading dock." Monica stepped forward, trying to reclaim her authority through volume. "Derek, you take orders from me." Derek's gaze flicked to Monica, then to Erin, standing at the patient's side, then to Reyes, then back. Something shifted behind his eyes. He exhaled through his nose. "With all due respect," Derek said, voice low, "you tried to throw a dying man out into a snowstorm. And now the power is cut." Monica's mouth opened. "How dare you?" Derek's voice did not rise. It did not need to. "I know what a hostile action looks like. This is one. You should go to your office and lock the door." Monica's face flushed deep red. "You are fired." Derek did not flinch. "Then fire me later." He turned to Reyes. "I have 2 guards on shift who can handle the loading dock. I have weapons in the security locker." Reyes' expression did not change, but a flicker of approval passed through his eyes. "Do it." Derek nodded once and moved into the dark hallway, his steps quick but controlled. Erin watched him go, then turned back to the patient. The paced rhythm held steady. She checked the wire site for bleeding, checked the dressing, checked the battery level again. Reyes stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You need to know why they are here." Erin met his gaze. "Tell me." Reyes spoke as if each word had weight. "The people who put those wounds in him are not random. They are an organization. We call them the Kestrel Network." Erin felt her throat tighten. "Arms traffickers." Reyes nodded. "They move weapons and money. They also buy influence." Mercer was deep cover. He disappeared. He has been out for months. Erin looked down at the man's face. "He has been on the street. He stayed invisible," Reyes said. He knew if he surfaced, they would kill him before he could debrief. Erin's mind filled in the gaps. A man choosing cold alleys over safe rooms. A man carrying a list he could not hand to anyone he did not trust. He triggered the beacon, Erin said. Reyes's eyes flicked to the patient's pocket. As a last resort. That signal is encrypted, but they have resources. If they can jam an entire hospital, they can find a beacon. Erin's stomach turned. So saving him brought them here. Reyes did not deny it. Keeping him alive keeps the information alive. A muffled sound rose from the far end of the hall like footsteps moving too carefully. Another crash, then a low, distant pop that did not sound like a normal gunshot. Too soft. Suppressed. Erin's shoulders tightened. "We are sitting in a trauma bay with glass doors." Reyes nodded. A fishbowl. Erin looked around, thinking fast. Thick walls. Interior rooms. Limited entrances. She remembered the imaging wing layout, remembered the MRI suite, built like a vault with copper shielding, one heavy door, no windows. "The MRI suite," Erin said. "It is interior, thick walls. Copper shielding, one entrance." Reyes' gaze sharpened. "Can we get a gurney through?" "Yes," Erin said. "But we have to move carefully. The wire cannot dislodge." Reyes turned to Rix. "Prep for transport. Keep the patient low." Rix nodded. Becky moved to the IV poles and began consolidating lines, taping tubing to prevent snags. Erin disconnected wall monitors and switched to the portable transport monitor, checking each lead twice. Monica's voice snapped from the doorway. "You cannot move him deeper into the hospital. We have patients. We have operations." Erin did not look at her. "If we leave him here, he dies." Monica stepped closer, trying to wedge herself between Aaron and the bed. Reyes shifted one step, blocking her path without touching her. Monica stopped short, her breath quick. Aaron took the head of the bed and looked at Reyes. "We move on my count, slow, no jerks." Reyes nodded. "You call it." Aaron's hand tightened on the rail. She listened for another suppressed pop. She heard none, but she felt the building holding its breath. 1, Aaron said. They released the brakes. 2, they eased the gurney forward wheels, whispering over tile. 3, they moved out of trauma 2 into the red-lit hallway tight formation around the bed. Reyes at the front scanning. Ricks at the side controlling lines. Becky at the rear watching the monitor. Aaron at the head eyes on the pacing capture and the patient's chest rise. As they rolled past a doorway, Aaron caught a glimpse of the waiting room through the glass. Shapes moved beyond the front entrance shadows in storm coats, calm and deliberate. The automatic doors shuddered once as if pushed and released. Aaron did not speak. She only tightened her grip on the gurney rail and guided it toward the imaging wing where the corridor narrowed and the walls grew thicker. Tiếp tục viết phần 4. Đã suy nghĩ trong 30 giây. The corridor narrowed as they left the open chaos of the trauma wing and entered the imaging hall where the ceiling dropped lower and the walls felt thicker. Emergency exit signs glowed like small warnings in the red wash of generator light. The wheels of the gurney whispered over tile, and every soft sound suddenly mattered. Aaron kept her eyes on the transport monitor. The spikes were tall and regular capture holding. The blood pressure was still fragile, the numbers hovering like a bird that had not decided whether to land. She walked at the head, one hand on the rail, the other hovering near the pacing unit, as if she could will it to behave. Reyes moved in front, shoulders squared, scanning corners and doorways with a discipline that did not advertise itself. 2 of his men floated behind spacing perfect rifles, angled down, fingers off triggers. Ricks stayed at Aaron's right, controlling lines and keeping the patient's tubing from snagging on anything in the cramped hall. Becky trailed at the foot with the IV pole's eyes locked on the waveform like it was scripture. They passed a staff bathroom with its door cracked open. A housekeeper stood inside, one hand over her mouth, eyes wet, watching them go by like they were a funeral procession that still had a chance. A child cried somewhere in the distance. The sound cut through the red light and landed in Aaron's chest. She did not turn toward it. She could not afford to. Ahead, the glass doors that led to the main entrance were visible through a cross corridor, and beyond them the storm swirled in thick white sheets. Aaron caught shapes moving outside, dark figures near the curb, too calm for stranded visitors. They did not run for cover from the snow. They stood like they had time. Reyes raised a hand fist closed and his team stopped. The gurney brakes clicked softly. Aaron's breath fogged the inside of her mask. Reyes leaned back just enough to speak without turning his head. "You see them?" Aaron nodded once, yes. "Keep your eyes on the patient," Reyes said. "Do not look at the door again." Aaron kept her gaze on the monitor, but her peripheral vision held the memory of those shapes the way a mind held the outline of danger, even when it refused to stare at it. A muffled pop echoed from the direction of the front entrance. Not loud, not the sharp crack of a normal gunshot. A suppressed sound that made the hair on Aaron's arms lift under her sleeves. Then another. Someone screamed a short, raw sound, then it cut off, as if the air had been grabbed and squeezed. Reyes moved silent and fast. One of his men peeled away toward the cross corridor while another stepped into a position that covered the intersection. Aaron watched Reyes' shoulders tighten, the subtle shift that meant the situation had turned from caution to contact. "Move," Reyes said, voice low. "Now." Aaron released the brakes and pushed. The gurney rolled forward, wheels squealing slightly as they picked up speed. The imaging hall opened into a junction where a sign pointed toward CT on the left and MRI on the right. The red lights gave the hallway an underwater feel. Shadows stretched long behind equipment carts and door frames. Aaron's shoes slid slightly on the tile where someone had tracked snow inside earlier. She adjusted her footing without slowing. Becky's voice came tight behind her. Vitals. Aaron glanced down. Heart rate held at the set pace. Blood pressure dipping again. Turn the dopamine up a notch, Aaron said. Becky's fingers moved on the roller clamp. Done. The patient's eyelids fluttered. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. Aaron leaned closer as she walked. Stay with me, she said barely louder than breath. Just breathe. His lips moved again. A word formed and fell apart. Reyes cut a glance back, talking. He is trying, Aaron said. He needs to stay still. Another suppressed pop closer now. A thud followed heavy and wet like a body hitting a wall. Reyes raised his hand again and the team shifted around the gurney, tightening their formation. Aaron felt the protective bubble closing in rifles and bodies positioning themselves between her patient and whatever was coming. At the next corner, Derek Hale appeared out of the darkness, moving fast, but controlled his security jacket, half unzipped his radio clipped to his shoulder, useless. He was breathing hard, but his eyes were steady. Loading dock is compromised, Derek said to Reyes, words coming clipped. I got one guy down. I did not see the shooter. Reyes' gaze sharpened. Where's the shooter now? Derek shook his head once. Not sure. Cameras are dead. Doors are propped. Someone knew exactly where to go. Aaron heard that and felt her stomach tighten. Someone who knew the building. Someone who knew where the blind spots were. Someone who knew how to move without causing panic until it was too late. Reyes nodded. Get your remaining people to block the service corridor. Derek's jaw flexed on it. He glanced at Aaron, then at the patient. His voice dropped. You did good. Aaron did not have time to answer. The gurney rolled past him and turned right toward MRI, deeper into the hospital's core. The MRI hallway was quieter. The walls were thicker, the doors heavier, built for shielding and privacy. The air felt still, as if the storm could not reach this far. Aaron saw the heavy MRI suite door ahead, a thick slab with a small window and a card reader. A figure stumbled into the hallway from a side door wearing scrubs. A nurse, hair loose from a ponytail, eyes wide. They're shooting, she whispered. Reyes did not slow. Get inside a room, lock it, stay down. The nurse backed into the doorway like she was being pulled by a string, then vanished inside and slammed the door. Aaron's pulse hammered. She pushed the gurney faster, careful not to jolt the patient. The transvenous wire at his neck was taped secured, but Aaron knew how little tape meant when a body hit a bump and gravity decided to take over. The suppressed pops grew louder. Then a new sound rose behind them, a harsh metallic clang, like something heavy striking a door. Derek had said the loading dock was compromised. If someone was inside, this wing was not as safe as its walls pretended. Reyes held one hand up, palm down, a signal to slow and listen. Aaron reduced speed without stopping. The gurney rolled on momentum, silent for a second. A voice drifted from the direction of CT, low and calm, not hospital staff. Aaron could not make out the words, only the tone. Professional. Controlled. Reyes' face tightened. He leaned toward his shoulder mic, pressed it, and got nothing but static. He released it, jaw set. He looked at Aaron. Open the MRI suite. Aaron reached into her pocket for her badge fingers, cold. The card reader glowed faintly in the emergency lighting. She swiped. The light blinked red. Aaron swiped again, slower. Red again. Her breath caught. It's not taking. Reyes' eyes flicked to the panel. Power issue. Aaron pressed her badge closer, then tried again. The reader beeped, finally, a grudging acceptance. The light turned green and the lock clicked. Aaron pulled the door open. The room beyond was dim and cavernous. The MRI machine loomed in the center like a massive pale ring. It bore a dark throat. The control room window sat along one wall. Thick glass reflecting the red emergency lights. Move, Reyes said. They rolled the gurney inside. Aaron guided the head end carefully, so the wire and lines did not snag on the doorframe. Becky followed with the IV poles, pulling them through with controlled urgency. Ricks stepped in, last, eyes sweeping the hallway before he pushed the door closed. The heavy door latched with a deep mechanical sound that felt final. For a second, the room was quiet, except for the soft beep of the transport monitor and the patient's ventilated breaths. Aaron's chest loosened by a fraction. Reyes turned to his men, barricade. A supply cart sat near the wall, loaded with MRI safe pads and coils. One of Reyes' men shoved it toward the door. The wheels rolled silently until the cart met the door with a dull thump. Another man wedged a heavy stool under the handle. Aaron moved to the patient's side, immediately checking the pacing wire dressing, checking the tubing, checking that the transport monitor had full battery. She listened for footfalls outside the door. "His pressure is low," Becky whispered. Aaron nodded, eyes on the numbers. "Keep the dopamine running. Do not let that line kink." Ricks stood near the head of the bed, hands hovering near the ventilator bag, eyes steady. Reyes looked around the room, then back at Aaron. "Anything I need to know about this suite?" Aaron's mouth went dry. The thought had been there since the hallway lodged under her ribs. "The magnet," she said. Reyes' brow tightened. "What about it?" Aaron forced her voice to stay level. "MRI magnets are not like normal machines. They are not off just because the lights are out. They are cooled and maintained. Unless the magnet is quenched, it stays active." One of Reyes' men glanced at his rifle, then at the machine. The air in the room felt like it changed, subtle and ominous, as if physics had been waiting quietly for someone to remember it existed. Reyes' eyes narrowed. "You are saying metal is a problem." "I am saying metal can become a missile," Aaron said. Ricks adjusted his stance, careful the way you stood near deep water. "Is it pulling now?" Aaron glanced at Reyes' rifle sling, then at the machine. She did not see movement, but she knew it did not have to be dramatic to be dangerous. "Stay back from the gantry," Aaron said. "Keep weapons away from the bore." Reyes nodded, sharp and decisive. "Everyone step back, keep your distance." His men shifted immediately, careful. The control in their movement was so precise it made Aaron's hands feel clumsy by comparison, even with all her years. Outside the door, a muffled thud sounded again, closer than before. A hand against metal. Another thud followed stronger testing. Becky's eyes widened. "They found us." Reyes' voice stayed calm. "They are searching." Aaron looked down at the patient. Colonel Nathan Mercer lay still, face slack, beard-matted chest rising with assisted breaths. The transvenous pacing wire kept his heart obedient, but only just. His skin was warmer now, color returning in slow increments. He looked less like a corpse and more like a man. His eyelids fluttered. He made a small sound, a strained exhale. Aaron leaned in. "Colonel, can you hear me?" His eyes opened, halfway unfocused at first. Then they sharpened, locking on Aaron with effort that cost him. He tried to speak. His throat worked around the tube and the dryness. The sound that came out was small but fierce. "List," he rasped. Aaron's breath caught. She glanced at Reyes, then back at Mercer. "What list?" Mercer's fingers twitched at his side, weak but insistent, as if he were reaching for something that was not there. Reyes stepped closer but stayed clear of the machine. "Colonel, where is it?" Mercer's gaze held on Aaron. His voice scraped up from somewhere deep. "Boot." Aaron stared at him for a beat, then nodded once. She moved to the foot of the bed, crouched, and reached toward his shoes. A heavy impact hit the door. The barricade cart shuddered. Dust fell from the top doorframe in a thin drift. Reyes's men raised their heads, bodies tightening in unison. No one shouted. No one panicked. The room simply shifted into readiness. Aaron's fingers worked at Mercer's laces, careful and fast. She pulled one knot loose, then the other. The boot was soaked stiff with salt and grime. She peeled it off gently. Outside, another impact, harder. The cart groaned against the door. Aaron looked up, once met Reyes' eyes, then returned to the boot. She ran her fingers along the tongue and felt something rigid taped beneath the leather, small and flat. She pressed it, and her fingertips touched plastic. The monitor beeped steadily, as if unaware of the door bowing under pressure. Aaron slipped 2 fingers under the tape and began to peel it back, slow enough not to tear what was underneath. The heavy door trembled again as something outside struck it with deliberate force.
Tiếp tục viết fan 5. Đã suy nghĩ trong 22 giây.
The heavy door trembled again as something outside struck it with deliberate force. The supply cart slid an inch across the tile metal wheels, squeaking in protest before settling under the pressure. Dust sifted from the frame in a thin curtain, catching the red emergency light and turning it into drifting embers. Aaron peeled the tape the rest of the way back. A tiny plastic rectangle clung to the inside of the boot tongue, sealed in a wrap like contraband. Smaller than her thumb, dark as a bruise. She stared at it for half a heartbeat, then slid it free and closed her fingers around it. Another impact slammed the door. The stool wedged under the handle jumped, then held. Reyes and his men shifted closer, bodies forming a loose wall between the entrance and the gurney. They kept distance from the MRI bore, but the machine still seemed to sit there with its own quiet menace, patient and indifferent. Reyes leaned toward Aaron without raising his voice. "Is that it?" Aaron opened her hand just enough for him to see. It was taped inside his boot. Mercer's eyes fluttered, tracking the movement. His lips moved around the tube, a rasp pushing past. "Longbow." Reyes' gaze sharpened. "Colonel, talk." Mercer's eyes locked on Aaron again as if she was the only steady thing in the room. He swallowed, throat working. Names he forced out. They bought them. The door shuddered harder. The barricade cart groaned. Something metallic scraped against the outside, a grinding sound that made Aaron imagine a pry bar seeking a seam. Becky's voice was tight. "They are going to come through." Reyes nodded once. He kept his eyes on the door. "They will. Everyone stay clear of the bore. Keep weapons back." Ricks shifted his rifle farther from the machine, then crouched near the gurney's head with the bag valve mask ready, his posture steady like a rock in a river. Aaron tucked the microcard into her scrub pocket and planted her hand on the bed rail, grounding herself in something solid. The transport monitor beeped quietly. The paced spikes stayed tall. Blood pressure hovered low but tolerable. It was holding, but it was holding because everything in the room was holding. A new sound rose outside the door, deeper than the impacts. A rhythmic thud that did not test the door so much as announce intention. A battering ram. The cart lurched again. The stool skidded, then caught. Aaron felt the vibration through the floor up her ankles. Reyes lifted 2 fingers to his team, a silent signal. They spread slightly, creating angles, keeping a line of sight on the entrance without bunching close enough for the magnet to become a third enemy. The ram hit again. The door bowed inward a fraction. Becky's breathing went shallow. Aaron could hear it even over the beeping. Mercer's eyes widened, fear breaking through the disciplined haze. He tried to lift a hand, failed, then squeezed Aaron's fingers weakly. Aaron leaned close. "Stay still," she murmured. "Do not fight the bed." His gaze flicked toward the door and back. "Fire," he rasped. Aaron's throat tightened. She did not want to believe him, but her nose caught it a second later. A faint, acrid bite like plastic warming too fast. Smoke. Reyes' eyes narrowed. Incendiaries. The ram hit again. The cart slammed into the door with a metallic moan. The latch held for a beat longer, then a sharp crack sounded as something in the mechanism gave way. The door burst inward. It did not fly open cleanly. The cart absorbed the first shove, blocking the gap, but the opening was wide enough for a hand to slip through, then an arm, then a shoulder. A figure in a wet, dark coat surged into view, face mostly shadowed, and in his hands was a compact firearm with a long tube. Suppressed. Professional. Held with confidence. He stepped into the threshold and the room changed. The MRI magnet took interest. The gun yanked sideways with violent certainty as if the air itself had grabbed it. The attacker's hands tightened, muscles straining, but it was not a strength contest between men. It was physics. The weapon tore free and launched across the room, slamming into the bore with a deafening clang that reverberated through Aaron's teeth. The attacker stumbled, eyes wide, staring at his empty hands in shock that lasted exactly 1 second. Reyes fired. He did not fire a rifle. He drew his sidearm polymer frame steel slide, and even that fought him. Aaron saw the barrel tug subtly toward the magnet as Reyes angled his body and forced the weapon to point where he needed. The shot cracked loud in the enclosed room, wrong and sharp after suppressed pops, and the attacker collapsed backward into the hall. Reyes tried to reholster, and the magnet tugged at the steel in the weapon like a hungry mouth. "Keep your weapons back," Aaron shouted, voice cutting through adrenaline. "They will pull." Reyes's jaw clenched as he fought the draw of the machine and managed to secure the pistol. His eyes snapped to the doorway. More shapes moved beyond it. They did not charge in with guns again. They had just learned the rules of this room. They moved with blades instead. 2 men stepped into the doorway, low and fast, each holding a knife that did not glint like steel. Ceramic or titanium, non-magnetic and deadly. Reyes shifted to meet them, empty hands, ready, body squared. "Ricks, stay on the patient," he ordered. Ricks stayed planted by the gurney, one hand near the airway equipment, the other ready to grab anything that was not metal. Aaron's eyes flicked to the oxygen tank near the wall. Metal, useless, dangerous. She scanned again and found the aluminum IV pole. MRI safe. She grabbed it and held it like a staff feet set, shoulders squared between the attacker's and Mercer's chest. The first attacker lunged at Reyes. Reyes moved like a hinge. He slipped sideways, caught the man's wrist, and redirected the blade away from his own body with a sharp twist that turned the attacker's momentum into a fall. The man crashed into the MRI casing with a sickening crack. The second attacker darted around, trying to bypass Reyes, aiming for the gurney. Aaron stepped into his path. He raised the knife eyes, cold, and for a split second Aaron saw that he wasn't angry. He wasn't panicked. He was simply completing a job. Aaron swung the aluminum pole. It connected with his forearm, a dull thud that made the knife wobble. He hissed, adjusted, and came again. Aaron swung lower this time, striking his shin. He staggered half a step. Reyes finished the first man with brutal efficiency, then snapped toward the second, but a third figure entered the room behind them, larger, moving with a different purpose. He did not have a knife. He had a baton, thick and dark, and he ignored Reyes entirely. He aimed for Aaron and the gurney, for the lines and the wire, and the small battery box that kept Mercer's heart obedient. Aaron's pulse surged. She was not a soldier. She had never been in a hand fight with someone who wanted her patient dead, but she had stood over victims of car wrecks and pulled glass from skin. She had held down convulsing bodies to keep them from smashing their own skulls. She understood leverage and vulnerability in a way that did not require training at a range. The big man lunged. Aaron did not punch him. She pivoted, grabbed an MRI safe cleaning spray bottle from the counter, and blasted the stream directly into his eyes. He roared and flinched, hands flying up baton, swinging blindly. Aaron ducked under it, stepped in close, and drove her thumb hard into the soft notch beneath his jawline, pressing upward and inward with practiced precision. It was the kind of pressure point she used in the ER to coax a vagal response, a maneuver done gently on purpose. This was not gentle. The man's eyes rolled, his knees buckled, he hit the floor, heavy breath leaving him in one ugly burst. The baton clattered away. Becky sucked in a breath behind Aaron. Aaron! Aaron did not look back. She kicked the baton farther from the gurney and tightened her grip on the pole. Reyes caught the second knife attacker in a tight clinch forearm, under the jaw, twisting until the blade fell from numb fingers. The attacker sagged. Reyes released him, and he dropped coughing, trying to crawl backward toward the door. Outside, the hallway filled with smoke, the smell stronger now, sharp and choking. Reyes shoved the supply cart back against the door with his shoulder wedging it hard. One of his men slammed the stool under the handle again, this time bracing it with another coil cart. "Hold," Reyes ordered. The pounding returned immediately. The door vibrated as the attackers outside tried to force it again. Smoke curled under the threshold in a thin gray ribbon. Ricks glanced toward the patient, then at Aaron. Smoke is going to drop his oxygen. Aaron's mind raced. She looked around the suite past the looming magnet to the control room window along the wall. Thick glass, not bulletproof, shielded. A separate room with its own door that likely connected to a different corridor. A way out that did not require going back through the hallway full of fire. The control room, Aaron said. Different ventilation, different corridor. Reyes's eyes flicked to the window. That glass hold. It holds sound, Aaron said. It doesn't have to hold us. Becky looked around. How do we break it without metal? Aaron's gaze landed on a heavy, non-magnetic stool and then on a thick MR eye-safe oxygen cylinder stand, but the cylinder itself was metal. She could not swing it near the magnet. She needed something heavy and safe. Her eyes found a large plastic equipment case near the wall filled with coils. She grabbed it with both hands and shoved it toward the window. Rick's Aaron said keep the airway protected, keep him stable. Reyes, I need cover while we move him through. Reyes nodded once, then glanced toward the door. The pounding intensified. Smoke thickened under the threshold. Move, Reyes said. Aaron and Becky gripped the gurney. Ricks stayed at the head, one hand on the tube, the other on the bag, ready to ventilate if the machine failed. Reyes positioned himself between the gurney and the door body, angled hands empty, ready to meet knives again if the door gave. Aaron shoved the equipment case hard into the control room window. The first hit cracked the glass in a spiderweb pattern. The second hit shattered it. The sound was sharp and violent, a burst of broken crystal spilling inward. Aaron recoiled instinctively, then stepped forward, sweeping remaining shards with the case, clearing a rough opening. Smoke rolled thicker now, creeping up the wall like something alive. Through Aaron said, they lifted the gurney's head end first, awkward in the cramped space. Becky climbed halfway onto the bed frame to help guide the monitor cables through. Ricks moved with the airway and bag eyes locked on Mercer's chest rise. Aaron pushed from the side, careful with the pacing wire at the neck, guarding it like it was the last thread holding the man to the world. The gurney slid through the shattered opening into the control room. It was narrower, filled with consoles and screens that were dark under emergency power. The air was cleaner in here, less smoke, less heat. Aaron's lungs expanded with the difference. Reyes's men followed, hauling the cart away from the MR door and letting it slam shut behind them, buying seconds that felt like gold. The control room had a door on the far side. Aaron rushed to it and tried the handle. Locked. She looked for a badge reader and found one, its light faint but active, on generator power. She swiped her badge. Green. The lock clicked, and the door opened onto a back corridor that smelled like disinfectant and cold. They rolled out fast, deeper into the hospital's interior. The beeping of the transport monitor continued steady, stubborn, the kind of sound Aaron wanted to marry and keep forever. Gunfire cracked somewhere above, muffled by floors and distance. Suppressed pops answered closer than she liked. Reyes leaned toward Aaron while moving. Colonel said, "List, what is it?" Aaron kept her eyes on the gurney path. "It is a microcard," he said. "Longbow." Mercer's eyes fluttered open again. His voice came out thin, scraped by dryness. "Longbow is names," he rasped. "Traitors. They bought Senate. They bought defense." Reyes's face went still, not shocked, but sharpened, as if a blurry picture had snapped into focus. "Kestrel owns people." Mercer's gaze drifted, then returned with effort. "They own roots. Contracts. They own law." Aaron felt cold run through her. That had nothing to do with the storm. She looked at Mercer and saw the war in his eyes, not fear, but the weight of knowing how deep rot could go and how hard it was to cut out without bleeding. Reyes kept pace beside the gurney. "We need to transmit." Mercer's lips moved around the word. "Uplink," he forced out. "Bird." The helicopters outside Becky said, voice tight. Reyes shook his head. "Comms are jammed. They cut power. They are inside the building. We need a hard link." Mercer's eyes closed and reopened. Med-evac bird has satellite. Roof. Aaron's jaw tightened. Roof meant exposure, wind, open sky, lines and wire pulling. It was the last place she wanted to take a man on a pacing wire. But corridors were turning into funnels and smoke would find them everywhere eventually. They moved past a supply room. A nurse huddled inside phone, dead in her hand, eyes wide. Erin pointed without slowing. "Stay down," she said. "Lock the door." The nurse nodded frantically and disappeared back into the room. The service elevator entrance came into view ahead a metal door under an emergency light that pulsed faintly. Erin's shoulders loosened for half a second. A direct path up away from smoke, away from tight corridors. Then a figure slumped into the hallway from the locker room door. Dr. Shane Whitaker. His lab coat was gone. His scrubs were stained with blood along the left sleeve. His face was pale and slick with sweat. He flinched hard when he saw Reyes's men hands coming up as if he expected to be shot. "Do not," he blurted voice high, "do not shoot." Erin's breath caught. She moved closer without thinking, instinct overriding anger. She had known this man for years, and even when she hated him, she could not turn off the part of her that assessed injury. "Shane," she said, dropping to one knee. "What happened?" Whitaker's eyes darted toward the corridor behind them. "They shot me," he stammered. "A man in a coat. I was trying to leave, and he shot me." Erin took his wrist gently and rolled the sleeve up. The wound was a shallow graze along the forearm, bleeding, but not catastrophic. "You are not dying," Erin said. Whitaker swallowed hard. "I thought they were going to kill me." Reyes' voice was flat. "Can you walk?" Whitaker nodded too fast. "Yes, yes." Erin stood and looked him over. He was shaking, but it did not match the blood loss. It matched fear that had roots. "We are moving," Reyes said. "Get out of the way." Whitaker pushed himself up, stumbling. Erin was about to turn away when a soft glow flickered through the thin fabric of Whitaker's scrub pocket. A pulse of light. Erin froze. The glow came again, rhythmic like a small screen, waking, then dimming. Her stomach tightened, and a quiet thought surfaced, cold and sharp. Phones were dead. Radios were dead. The whole building was being jammed. Erin took one step closer to Whitaker, eyes on his pocket. "Why is your phone lighting up?" Whitaker stopped mid-breath. His eyes flicked to Reyes, then back to Erin. "It is not," he said too quickly. Erin's voice dropped. "My phone is a brick. His radio is dead. The landlines are down. So why is your screen lighting up?" Whitaker's face went slack. The lie had nowhere to go. Reyes turned toward him in a single smooth motion, body tightening, one hand ready, the other staying clear of metal. "Empty your pockets." Whitaker's hands trembled as he reached into the pockets slowly, like a man pulling out a weapon by accident. He produced a cheap flip phone, the kind you bought with cash, and no questions. The screen was lit. A message sat on it, bright in the dim corridor. "Target moving to service elevators. Cut them off." The hallway went silent except for the transport monitors beeping. Erin stared at the words until they stopped being letters and became a betrayal with weight. Whitaker's eyes filled fast. "I did not," he choked out. "I did not know they would do this." Erin's voice came out low and raw. "You told them where we were." Whitaker shook his head violently. "They paid me. They said they were contractors. They said they were looking for military admissions. AWOL, missing persons. I have debts. I have student loans. My mom is sick. I needed money." Erin's jaw clenched so hard it ached. "You sold a patient." Whitaker's tears spilled. "I did not know they would attack the hospital." Reyes stepped in and grabbed Whitaker by the collar, slamming him back against the wall hard enough to rattle the metal locker room sign. Whitaker gasped. "Because of you," Reyes said, voice deadly calm, "they are waiting." Whitaker's mouth worked. "I can fix it," he pleaded. "I can text them. I can send them somewhere else." Reyes held him there, eyes cold. "Do it." Whitaker's hand shook so badly he nearly dropped the phone. Erin watched him type with trembling thumbs, the keys clicking too loud in the quiet corridor. Changed route, heading to basement. He hit send. Reyes released Whitaker and snatched the phone from his hand. He brought his boot down on it once, crushing plastic and battery with a sharp crack. He ground it into the tile until the light died. Erin flinched at the violence of it, then forced herself to breathe. Her heart was racing not from fear alone, but from the shock of realizing how easy it had been for the enemy to be inside their own walls. Reyes looked at Whitaker, who slid down the wall, sobbing quietly, blood smearing the tile. "You find a room," Reyes said. "You lock the door. You stay there." Whitaker looked up, tears streaking his face. "They will kill me." Reyes's expression did not change. "Then pray you were useful enough for them to forget." Erin's throat tightened. She did not speak. She could not afford softness right now, not with Mercer's heart depending on a wire taped to his neck and a battery running on borrowed time. Reyes turned to Erin. "We move." Erin nodded and returned to the gurney, hands steady again through force of will. Becky grabbed the IV poles. Rix checked the tube, checked the bag, checked the monitor. They pushed the gurney into the service elevator vestibule. The elevator doors were partly open, frozen mid-cycle under generator power. A small maintenance panel glowed faintly. Reyes looked at Becky. "Do you have a badge that overrides?" Becky swallowed, no. Erin reached into her pocket and pulled out her own badge again, then hesitated. Some service elevators required a higher clearance. Imaging staff, security. Reyes looked toward Whitaker, then back. He stepped to the sobbing doctor, yanked Whitaker's ID badge from his lanyard in one clean motion, and tossed it to Erin. Erin caught it. The plastic felt cold. She swiped it. The elevator doors shuddered, then slid open fully, with a tired, mechanical sigh. Erin guided the gurney inside, careful with the head end. Rix and Becky followed. Reyes and one of his men stepped in last, and the doors began to close. As the gap narrowed, Erin saw Whitaker still on the floor, hands covering his face, shoulders shaking. She felt something twist in her chest, then she shut it down. Mercy could wait. The patient could not. The elevator doors sealed. The hum of the elevator motor began vibrating through Erin's feet. The transport monitor beeped steadily. Mercer's paced rhythm held strong spikes rising and falling with stubborn regularity. Erin pressed the button marked roof. The panel light flickered, then stayed lit. The elevator began to rise. Tiếp tục viết phần 6 đã suy nghĩ trong 7 giây. The elevator rose with a low mechanical groan, like the building itself was protesting the direction they were taking. Red emergency light pulsed across Erin's hands as she steadied the gurney. The transport monitor beeped in a calm rhythm that felt almost insulting compared to the chaos clawing at the floors below. Reyes stood near the doors, shoulders squared, head tilted slightly as if he could hear through steel. Rix crouched at Mercer's head, one hand hovering near the tube, the other near the bag valve mask. Becky kept the IV poles tight against the frame so nothing swung. Erin watched the transvenous pacing wire at Mercer's neck like it was a fuse. Floor 3. Floor 4. A faint thud vibrated through the elevator shaft. Not the soft rumble of wind. A heavy impact, distant but real. The building was being forced open in places that were never meant to be doors. Mercer's eyelids fluttered. His brow tightened, pain and effort working their way through sedation and cold. Erin leaned close. "Colonel, breathe. We are moving you. Stay still." His eyes opened enough to find her face. He tried to speak. The tube stole most of the sound, but a whisper still pushed through, shredded. "Roof," he rasped. "Yes," Erin said. "We are going to the roof." His gaze slid past her as if tracking the elevator's movement through memory. "They will be there." Reyes's eyes narrowed. "How do you know?" Mercer's eyes found Reyes focused despite the weakness. "They know routes. They know exits." Reyes nodded once. He did not argue with intelligence spoken by a man who had already survived too long. Floor 5. The elevator slowed, then jerked slightly before stopping. The roof light on the panel remained steady, a small green certainty. Reyes lifted his hand palm down, everyone still. They listened. Wind hissed across the roof access door. Something metallic clanged loose, repeating. A distant burst of gunfire echoed, muffled by concrete and weather, then silence again. The storm above pressed against the building with relentless force. Reyes leaned toward Erin. "Keep the gurney low." Erin nodded, fingers tightening on the rail. Reyes's voice dropped to his team. "Move on my count. When the doors open, eyes up. Weapons stay controlled. Do not bring rifles near the magnet's pull range if we have to move back down. Rix glanced at Reyes. The roof is open. Reyes's gaze stayed on the doors. Then we make it fast. The elevator dinged softly. The doors began to slide open. Cold air punched into the cab, sharp and wet, carrying the smell of snow and jet fuel. Wind shoved at the opening like it wanted inside. Aaron's eyes adjusted to the darkness. The rooftop lights flickered under generator power, throwing uneven pools of light across HVAC units and ventilation stacks. The helicopter was there low and hovering rotors beating the storm into a violent spiral. The aircraft's lights cut through the snow like knives. A crew chief stood in the open doorway, tethered one arm, waving hard. Aaron's chest tightened with relief that lasted exactly 1 second. Between the elevator and the helicopter, 4 figures stepped from behind a line of ventilation stacks. Dark coats, hoods, faces mostly hidden. They did not run. They moved with calm intention, raising weapons that looked wrong in a hospital, even on a roof. Reyes's voice snapped. Contact. His men surged forward, rifles coming up, muzzles angled away from Aaron as they established a firing line. Suppressed pops answered from the attackers, softer than the wind, but the impacts were unmistakable. Concrete chipped near the elevator threshold. Sparks jumped off a metal railing. Aaron dropped her weight, pushing the gurney low, using the frame and mattress as cover. Move, Reyes barked. Now. Aaron pushed. The wheels caught briefly on the threshold lip, then rolled free onto the roof. Wind slammed into her face. Snow stung her cheeks. Her shoes slipped on wet concrete, and she widened her stance without slowing. Becky stayed at the foot-teeth clenched, hands white on the IV poles. Rix kept his body over Mercer's head, shielding the tube and monitoring the rise of his chest. Shots cracked, suppressed, and tight. Reyes and his men returned fire in short, controlled bursts. The attackers shifted positions using the HVAC units like a maze. One of them angled left flanking, moving toward Aaron's side. Aaron saw him in her peripheral vision. A silhouette weapon coming up aimed at her, not at Reyes. Her breath caught. Reyes saw it too, but he did not have a clean angle. The wind pushed snow across the roof, obscuring sight lines. The attacker's barrel leveled toward Aaron's chest. Reyes moved without hesitation. He threw his body into the line, stepping between Aaron and the muzzle. A round slammed into his chest plate with a blunt thud that Aaron felt through the air. The impact knocked him backward, shoulders hitting the concrete hard. Aaron's throat tightened. Reyes. Reyes grunted, teeth bared, then pushed himself up with sheer defiance. One hand braced the other, drawing his sidearm. He fired twice. The attacker dropped behind an HVAC unit and did not rise. Go, Reyes shouted, voice rough, blood at the corner of his mouth from the impact. Move. Aaron shoved the gurney forward with everything she had. The crew chief was still waving, shouting something Aaron could not hear over the rotors. The helicopter's landing skids hovered inches above the pad, the pilot holding it steady in a storm that wanted to shove the aircraft into the building. Rounds sparked off concrete near Aaron's feet. She did not look down. She kept her eyes on the open door. Hands reached out from the helicopter, gloved and strong. They grabbed the gurney rails as Aaron pushed Mercer close enough for transfer. Rix climbed up first, hauling the head end. Becky shoved the poles toward the door and climbed next, slipping on the wet metal lip before someone caught her. Aaron felt arms wrap around her shoulders and pull. She stumbled into the cabin and landed hard on the floor, knees striking metal. She turned, immediately searching for Mercer. Mercer's body was being dragged inside careful hands, protecting the wire at his neck, the tube, the monitor leads. The pacing unit was carried in like a relic. Reyes was still on the roof. Rix, half inside, half out, fired short bursts while dragging Reyes toward the door by his vest. Reyes's men covered the move rifles, coughing suppressed fire into shadows. The door gunner on the helicopter swung a mounted weapon into position and unleashed a heavier burst. The sound was different, deeper, raw power cutting through the storm. The attackers dove for cover. Concrete dust lifted in the wind. Rix hauled Reyes inside and collapsed him against the cabin wall. Reyes's breath was harsh, controlled, a man refusing to let pain make decisions. The crew chief slammed the cabin door halfway, then yanked it back open to clear the last tether. Clear, the crew chief screamed. Clear. The helicopter banked hard and lifted rotors, beating snow into a white frenzy. Erin felt the floor tilt under her, felt her stomach drop, then settle as they gained altitude. Below them, the hospital shrank into a dark block with scattered red emergency lights and frantic movement near the entrances. The roof vanished under swirling snow. The storm swallowed the scene as if it had never existed. Erin pressed her back against the cabin wall and stared at Mercer. His eyes were open now, unfocused but present, tracking the vibration of the aircraft. The transvenous pacing wire held. The transport monitor beeped steadily. His chest rose and fell with assisted breaths. Reyes shifted beside Erin, one hand pressed to his chest plate. He caught her eye and nodded once, a silent confirmation that he was still in the fight. The pilot's voice came through the headset, clipped and calm. "Dust off 1 to command package secure departing Pikes Peak Regional." Static answered, then a different voice cut in colder, mechanical wrong. "Dust off 1. You are not cleared for Peterson. Divert immediately to Sector 4. Failure to comply will result in engagement." The pilot's head snapped slightly. Erin saw it in the way his shoulders stiffened. "That's not Tower," he muttered. The crew chief turned eyes wide. "Say again." The mechanical voice repeated the order, identical tone, identical cadence. No background noise, no human breath. Reyes's jaw tightened. He leaned toward the pilot, shouting over rotor noise, "Ignore it." The pilot's hands tightened on the controls. "Signal is coming from above us," he said, voice tight. "Not from the ground." A shriek filled the cabin, an alarm, high and urgent, pulsing like panic. The pilot's voice rose. "Missile lock." Erin's blood went cold. Becky's face drained. She gripped the cabin strap so hard her knuckles went white. Rix braced himself near Mercer, one hand shielding the monitor from shifting. The helicopter lurched left, banking hard. Erin's body slammed against the wall. The cabin tilted. Snow and darkness spun outside the small windows. "Flares," the pilot shouted. "Flares." White bursts erupted outside, bright enough to flash through the cabin. Magnesium streaked across the storm like falling stars. A second later, something roared past the open air gap near the tail, a blur of fire and speed. It detonated against the flares with a crack that rattled Erin's teeth. The helicopter shuddered hard, dropping for a terrifying second before the pilot wrestled it back up. The alarm continued. "Lock again," the crew chief shouted. "I cannot outrun a drone with this load," the pilot yelled back. "We are a sitting duck." Erin turned to Mercer. His eyes were fixed upward, listening, understanding. His hands trembled. He reached weakly toward his boot, then stopped, remembering his boot was gone. Erin pulled the microcard from her scrub pocket and held it in her palm without thinking. It felt absurd, this tiny piece of plastic holding so much fear. Mercer's eyes flicked to it. Captain Mercer rasped, voice thin but commanding. He looked toward Reyes. "If we go down, you swallow it." Reyes shook his head, blood at his lip, eyes hard. "We are not going down." He reached to his headset, bypassed something, and transmitted on an open emergency frequency, voice sharp with authority. "Mayday. Mayday. This is Dust-Off 1 Actual. We are under missile engagement. We have longbow package aboard. Request immediate air support." Static answered for a breath that felt too long. Then a voice came through, calm and human, carrying the steadiness of someone who had done this before. "Dust-Off 1. Actual, this is Viper Lid. Copy missile engagement. Maintain course." Reyes's shoulders loosened by a fraction. Erin leaned toward the window, fighting the tilt and vibration. Above the clouds, a flash of light tore through the darkness. A sonic boom rolled across the storm, distant but powerful. Then another, 2 fighters punched down through the cloud deck, cutting across the helicopter's path with brutal speed. Their lights were brief streaks, their shapes barely visible, but their presence changed everything. Viper 2, engage, Bandit Viper lead said. A streak of fire shot into the storm above, disappearing into cloud. A beat later, a massive fireball lit the sky bright enough to paint the cabin in orange and white. Aaron felt the heat of it through the window like a memory. The fireball faded quickly, swallowed by snow and altitude. The missile lock alarm cut off abruptly. The pilot exhaled a harsh breath. Lock gone. Viper lead's voice returned steady as steel. Dust off 1, you are clear. Continue to Peterson. We have you. Aaron's chest loosened. She did not cry. Her eyes burned anyway. Becky slumped back against the strap, breathing fast, whispering something Aaron could not hear. Rix checked Mercer's vitals again, fingers moving with calm precision. Pacing, holding, he called out. Reyes closed his eyes for half a second, then opened them again, forcing himself present. The helicopter continued through the storm with the fighters above like unseen guardians. The cabin was still violent with vibration, but the threat felt different now, controlled. They approached the base through a curtain of snowlights, emerging in the distance a runway and a helipad glowing against white darkness. The helicopter descended skids, touching down with a jolt that made Aaron's teeth clack. The rotors slowed, then settled into a lower thrum. The cabin door opened, and cold air poured in again, but this time it carried the smell of fuel and open space, not gunpowder and fear. A medical team surged forward immediately, not civilian uniforms, crisp even in the weather. MPSA formed a line around the landing zone. Floodlights turned the snow into glittering needles. Then Aaron saw him. General Roland Pierce stood near the edge of the pad, coat open, bareheaded in the storm. Marines flanked him still as statues. Pierce did not look like someone who lived behind desks. He looked like someone who had spent his life making hard decisions and sleeping fine afterward. The med team pulled Mercer out fast, transferring him onto a waiting stretcher, keeping the pacing wire stable, the tube secure, the monitor running. Aaron followed, hands hovering, ready to correct any slip. Pierce stepped in, close eyes on Mercer. He reached out and gripped Mercer's hand firm, grounding. "Welcome home," Pierce said, voice low. Mercer's eyes fluttered. His mouth moved around effort. "List," he rasped. Aaron pulled the microcard from her pocket with fingers that finally shook. She held it out. Pierce took it carefully, like it could cut. His jaw tightened. His eyes did not widen. They hardened. "Get him inside," Pierce said. "Now." The med team moved, boots crunching on snow stretcher wheels, rattling. Aaron stayed alongside, matching their pace. Pierce turned his gaze to Aaron. For a moment, everything in Aaron's body expected accusation. She had disobeyed orders. She had fought security. She had cut into a patient as a nurse. She had used the MRI suite as a battlefield and shattered its control room window. Pierce looked at her like he was reading a report he already believed. "You are Aaron Caldwell," he said. "Yes, sir," Aaron replied. Pierce's eyes flicked over her, taking in dried blood on her sleeve. The dark smear of soot on her cheek, the way she still carried herself, like the room could collapse if she stopped paying attention. "You kept him alive long enough to make the handoff," Pierce said. Aaron swallowed. "I had help." Pierce's gaze shifted to Reyes being helped off the helicopter by 2 men. Reyes was upright, stubborn, refusing a stretcher, one hand still pressed to his chest plate. Pierce nodded at him once, then returned his gaze to Aaron. Pierce raised his hand in a salute, crisp and exact. The Marines behind him followed a synchronized snap of respect that made the air feel suddenly quiet. Aaron froze for half a second, then returned the salute clumsily, not trained, but honest. Pierce dropped his hand. "Get cleaned up," he said. "Then you will give a full statement. Medical first." Aaron nodded, throat too tight for more words. Inside the medical facility, the world shifted from storm and gunfire to bright light and sterile speed. Doors opened with badges. Hallways swallowed sound. Mercer was wheeled into a critical care bay where a cardiology team moved in with calm certainty. Hands, sure voices low, transferring lines confirming pacing wire placement, preparing definitive intervention. Erin stood near the wall, arms heavy, watching the work she had held together with tape and force of will become orderly in better hands. She felt her knees go slightly weak, then locked them. Rix stepped beside her and handed her a bottle of water. "Drink," he said. Erin took it and swallowed the cold water, shocking her throat. "Is Reyes okay?" Rix glanced toward the corridor where Reyes disappeared with medics. "He will be loud about it." "That means yes." Erin almost smiled. It did not fully form. A uniformed investigator appeared, quiet, holding a small recorder, eyes serious. "Nurse Caldwell." Erin looked up. "We will need your statement," the investigator said. "When you are able." Erin nodded. "I am able." They moved her into a small room with a table and 2 chairs. The light was bright. The silence was unnatural after hours of alarms and rotor noise. Erin sat and realized her hands were trembling hard now, delayed adrenaline finally having permission. The investigator clicked the recorder on. Start from the moment the patient arrived. Erin closed her eyes for a breath, then spoke, steadying her voice with the same discipline she had used in the trauma bay. She described the call, the hypothermia, the complete heart block, the scars, the rusted tag, the coded words, Whitaker's order to move the patient, Monica's insistence, security grabbing her arms, the red phone ringing, the Pentagon voice, the siege, the MRI magnet, the knives, the smoke, the betrayal. As she spoke, Whitaker's name, something cold, settled in her stomach again. The image of his phone glowing in the dark hallway kept returning, bright and undeniable. When she finished, the investigator nodded, once expression unchanged. "Thank you." Erin swallowed. "What happens now?" The investigator did not answer directly. "You will be contacted. Do not leave the base until cleared." Erin stood and stepped into the hallway. A television mounted high in the corner played without volume a news station, showing a winter storm graphic over Colorado Springs, then footage of emergency vehicles, then a blurred shot of the hospital exterior under flashing lights. A banner scrolled at the bottom, too small to read from here, but Erin did not need it. She could already feel the weight of what had happened growing beyond the walls. Becky sat on a bench nearby, wrapped in a blanket, eyes red. She looked up when Erin approached and let out a shaky breath. "You okay?" Erin asked. Becky laughed once thin. "No, you." Erin sat beside her. "No." They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the low hum of the building and the distant murmur of military voices. A door opened down the hall. Reyes emerged with his chest plate removed, a medic taping a bandage over a bruised area where the round had struck. Reyes caught Erin's eye and nodded. Erin stood and walked toward him. "Captain." Reyes's mouth twitched. "Lieutenant," he said, using the field title he had given her earlier, as if it had always been true. Erin's throat tightened. "Thank you." Reyes shrugged slightly, then winced. "You did the hard part. You kept the patient alive in a place that tried to kill him with paperwork." Erin's jaw tightened. "Whitaker." Reyes' eyes went flat. "He is not disappearing." Erin held Reyes's gaze a moment, then nodded once. Hours later, the storm outside eased into a steady fall. Erin stood near a window and watched snow settle in clean layers over runway lights. She felt exhausted in a way that went beyond sleep. Her body kept trying to replay the moment the MRI ripped the gun from the attacker's hands, the clang echoing like a bell. The moment the missile detonated against the flares. The moment Pierce saluted her. A phone rang behind her. Not the red rotary phone this time, just a standard line, but the sound still made her muscles tense. A uniformed staff member approached. "Nurse Caldwell, General Pierce requests your presence." Erin followed down a corridor to a conference room. Pierce stood inside with 2 other officers, a folder in his hand, the microcard sealed in an evidence bag on the table. Pierce looked up when Erin entered. "Caldwell." "Yes, sir." Pierce gestured to a chair. Erin did not sit until he did. "You saved Colonel Mercer's life," Pierce said. Erin kept her face neutral. He is still alive because your team got him out. Pierce's gaze held. He is alive because you refused to let him be moved. You refused to let him be discharged. You refused to let a heartbeat become a billing decision. Erin felt heat rise behind her eyes. She forced it down. I did my job. Pierce opened the folder. Papers inside clean and official. Your hospital administrator filed an incident report, he said. Your attending physician filed one as well. Erin's stomach tightened. I expected that. Pierce's mouth did not soften, but something in his eyes did. Those reports will not determine what happens next. Erin kept her shoulders squared. What happens next? Pierce did not give her a speech. He did not offer comfort. He offered a decision. We have a shortage of people who can do what you did, Pierce said. In the field and at home. Erin held his gaze. I'm an ER nurse. Pierce nodded once. And tonight you operated under pressure, made correct calls, and kept an asset alive while hostile forces attempted to kill him in an American hospital. Erin's pulse quickened. Sir, I am not asking for recognition. Pierce's voice stayed even. I am not offering recognition. I am offering a position. Erin's breath caught. She did not speak. Pierce slid a document across the table. Director of Combat Medical Training at Evans Army Community Hospital, Fort Carson. Erin stared at the paper. The words felt unreal, like they belonged to someone else. Then she felt a sharp pull in her chest that surprised her. Not pride, not ambition. Something simpler, a sense of being used correctly. Pierce watched her. You will have time to consider. You will also have time to sleep. You look like you have not blinked in days. Erin's mouth tightened. Yes, sir. Pierce stood. One more thing. Erin looked up. Pierce's gaze hardened. The people on that list will be dealt with. The network will be dismantled. Your doctor will be arrested. Your administrator will be removed. Erin's throat tightened at the certainty in his voice. She believed him. Pierce nodded once as if sealing the conversation. You can go. Erin stood and walked out, the paper still on the table, her mind too full to hold it yet. When she returned to Colorado Springs days later, the hospital looked the same from the outside. Same concrete, same parking lot lights, same wind pushing snow off the roof edges. Inside it felt smaller. Monica Price's office door was closed. Her nameplate was gone. Derek Hale met Erin near the nurse's station, eyes tired, jaw bruised from a hit he had not mentioned. They walked her out, Derek said quietly. Erin nodded. She did not ask for details. She did not need them. And Whitaker Derek added. Erin's hands tightened around the strap of her bag. Where is he? Derek exhaled. Federal agents took him from his apartment at dawn. He cried the whole way. Erin closed her eyes for a beat, then opened them. She did not feel relief. She felt a grim confirmation that the world still worked sometimes. That week, Erin cleared out her locker, folded her scrubs, and left her old stethoscope hanging on the hook for one more second before she took it down. The halls smelled the same, but she felt different walking through them. Not heroic, not invincible, just changed. On her last day, Becky hugged her hard enough to hurt. Do not forget us, Becky said, voice thick. Erin swallowed. I will not. Derek offered a hand. Erin took it. His grip was firm, respectful. You did right, he said. Erin nodded once. So did you. She drove to Fort Carson under clear winter light, the storm finally gone. The mountains stood sharp against the sky, indifferent and beautiful. At Evans Army Community Hospital, security checked her badge, then waved her through. The hallways were cleaner, quieter, but the feeling was familiar. Work waited here, too. A small office door at the end of a corridor had a new plaque mounted at eye level. Erin Caldwell, Director of Combat Medical Training. Erin stood in front of it for a moment, reading her own name like it belonged to someone else. Then she opened the door. Inside, the room smelled like fresh paint and paper. A desk, a chair, a stack of files. a small American flag on a stand. Erin set her bag down and ran her hand along the desk edge as if checking that it was real. A phone rang. Erin's body tensed on instinct, then she exhaled and picked it up. Director Caldwell, a voice said, calm, efficient. "We have a critical case incoming. We need your eyes on it." Erin did not hesitate. She grabbed her stethoscope and moved toward the door. "I am on my way," she said.